So this screencastify is going to focus on how to successfully answer a 12-mark usefulness sources question. So in terms of the common misconceptions in relation to this question, the main one is failing to explicitly state what the sources are actually useful for. So in other words, what do they tell you? Linked to that, stating points about provenance and thinking you've covered provenance rather than actually explaining how the provenance of the sources makes them useful is another key area. Equally, sometimes candidate students comment on what the sources omit. You're not going to really get credit for that. You need to positively evaluate the sources, focusing on what is useful about them. And again, linked to that, focusing on bias instead of positively evaluating the sources, commenting on what is useful about them. Equally, if you're looking at getting the higher marks, stock evaluation, so in other words, it's useful because it's a photograph, they're not going to get you into comments like that are not going to get you into level 3, level 4 answers. So to do well in relation to this question, what do you need to do? You need to cover content, so in other words, what the source shows, context, so that's relevant knowledge, specific detail, broad context, provenance, so that's the origin of the source, who wrote it, when did they write it, why did they write it, where did they write it, what does it tell us? All of these things are relevant. Equally, if you're looking to do really well, what is the relationship between the two sources? So, in other words, is the relationship one of similarity or difference? If you group them together, do they tell the whole picture, for example? And again, how does this impact on the usefulness of the sources? I'm just going to go through the next couple of slides fairly quickly, and you can just look at them at your own time. Maybe pause the screen, castify. There are two sources. One is from a secret report from an American government official working in China. You can see you have the date as well. And beneath the provenance, you have the content of the source. So source B, again, is very much from the time. You can see the provenance, a cartoon published in 1952, American newspaper, and it's very much commenting on the casualties of the Korean War. And the written bits of information, the source caption, white crosses mount while peace talks. Peace talks dwindle. So, in terms of model answer and key to the example that I've highlighted, the blue is examples of good technique and practice in relation to use of the words of the question, reference to content, reference to provenance, and reference to the relationship between the two sources. In orange, comments on context, irrelevant knowledge, so that could either be specific detail or broad context. So if if you have a look at the coverage of both sources, you will see in the blue there is reference to the provenance and reference to the content of the source. And also, I've highlighted where the model answer uses the words of the question useful to ensure it's relevant. As you can see in a really good answer, content, provenance, or knowledge are often intertwined. So maybe it's not quite as straightforward as a standard PE paragraph. If, however, you want to focus on commenting on provenance, then content, then bringing in own knowledge, then that is an equally valid approach. So again, very similar with source C. In blue, comments linked to usefulness, content, provenance, all flagged up and highlighted in blue, and relevant or knowledge in orange. And again, if you're looking at doing well, what I referenced earlier, trying to look at the relationship, the links between the two sources. And you can kind of see that a conclusion at the end that really reaches a strong judgment and focuses on the answer definitely helps. So, this would be a strong example of a 12 mark usefulness questions. Thank you and good luck.